Hello fellow cyclists, I hope that you're all well and not struggling too much with the lockdown. Due to this COVID-19 situation, I've obviously not been doing my daily commute to work, so I've not had any content to put up on the video on YouTube. But I do notice that a lot of people in my comments ask me what bike I ride, so today I thought I'd do a quick video, quick tour of my bike. I've been commuting daily through the London rush hour for something like 14 years now. In that time I've had about 5 different bikes. But this is the bike I sort of landed on now, and I'm by no means have compared all the bikes on the market, but I'll give you a quick description as to why I've picked this one and why I like it. It's certainly, of all my bikes, my favourite so far. So less of me, let's do a bit of a tour of the bike. So my bike is a Genesis Day 110 2019 gravel bike. So it's single speed. It's not fixed. It's not a fixed speed, because you can see you can freewheel, but there's only one gear, so it makes it very simple, no gear changes. And the bike is advertised by Genesis as a perfect commuting bike. So it looks similar with the drop handlebars to a racing bike, but actually it's quite a solid, heavy, dependable, sturdy, workhorse commuter, which is perfect for me. You see we've got some mudguards here on the front here and on the back to stop the spray from the rain. Very low maintenance with one gear. It's a steel frame rather than carbon or aluminium, which means it's heavier, but it gives it a lot of flexibility. So the problem with carbon frames is they're very lightweight. They're great for if you want, to shave every ounce for competing, but they're quite rigid. So if you're going over a bumpy road, you'll really feel that. Whereas a steel frame has a lot of flex in it, which means as you go over the bumps, it soaks up a lot of that before it comes up to your hands or your bottom. So that makes it quite a comfortable ride for the commute. And I very much like the drop handlebars for commuting, and I'll tell you why. The drop handlebars, actually, I would never actually use these drops whilst commuting, but the hoods here are extremely comfortable. So it gives you a nice neutral wrist position. Like a flat bike, you're kind of a bit more like this. If you're riding like this, and there's a bit more strain on the wrist, whereas up here, you've got a nice straight wrist, neutral wrist position, it's comfortable. I've actually angled these back a bit, so the brakes are super easy. So when I cycle like this the whole time, so that if I need to stop in an instant, I'm already there. If I'm down here or something, you've got to jump up. And with cycling in London, as you've seen from my videos, you quite often have to react quickly to something. So I find it most comfortable just to sit here on the hoods for my commute. Another feature I like about this bike is the disc brakes. So typically bikes have 2 different forms of brakes. You can have cantilever rim brakes, and they kind of pinch on the top here, and they pinch on the rim when you pull the lever. Or you can have disc brakes where there's some brake pads are down here, and they pinch onto this disc here. There's lots of discussion about whether disc brakes or rim brakes are better. And I'd say in the dry, they're about the same. But the key thing that I've noticed is in the wet weather, the bike rim obviously goes very close to the ground, goes through puddles, gets a lot of spray. So the rim of the wheel rim is very wet, so when the brake pads pinch onto it, they have to clear a lot of water before they'll start to bite and slow the bike. Whereas the discs are just lifted about a foot here off the ground, and they just get a bit less of the spray, and the braking tends to be just a bit more instant when you hit it, just because of that. There's less water to clear on the disc brakes. Also, you can see they're ventilated, lots of holes here, so the water can be cleared a bit quicker. So that's a good feature. I would definitely recommend, especially for commuting, where you're not worried about weight, because disc brakes tend to be a bit heavier than cantilever brakes. But if you're a commuter, you're not too worried about a few grams here and there for speed. So I definitely recommend disc brakes. Another thing is I've recently switched to these Marathon Swab puncture-proof tyres. I used to have Continental Gator Skin tyres, which were very good, but they were sort of more slick, and I think there was still a performance element. They're sort of touted as winter training tyres and stuff like that, so I think there's still a performance element, and I would typically get 1 or 2 punches a year on those. But I'd be recommended these. I haven't used them for very long, just a month, but these, you can see these have got a bit more tread on them, so there's a bit more natural protection against punctures. but also they've got a very thick puncture-proof layer in here. So the Continentals had it as well. They had like a Kevlar strip, so if something worked in, it would get stuck into the Kevlar strip, but eventually it would still work its way through. And most of my punctures tend to be small, sharp little stones or little shards of glass from broken headlamps or beer bottles or stuff like that. But these marathon tyres have got a very thick layer. In the shop when I went, they actually had a strip of tyre with a load of drawing pins stuck into it, and it hadn't. The layer's so thick that it didn't go through to the inner tube inside. So hopefully these will give me puncture-proof riding for a long time. And as you can see, they quite handily have a little reflective strip around, which is a nice bonus. And one other thing at the front of the bike which I like is this mudguard here. So this is just basically stopping water flicking up on you. You can see there's a nice rubber flange. It's a horrible word, but I think it's the right word for this. The bottom here. And what it's doing is just stopping, all the spray going onto your cycle shoes. So let me zoom in on that bit there, just so you can see. There you can see it's a bit thicker at the bottom there, and that's just to stop the water spraying onto your cycle shoes, so your feet stay a little bit more dry. I mean, on a very wet day, you're going to get wet, whatever, but every little bit helps. So you might hear a bit of background noise, and that's because we're looking after the dog at the moment, Agatha, and she's not happy that she's not getting the attention. So she's trying to hog it. Yeah, little rascal. Let me do my video. Go on. Anytime you like. You done? You off? At the front of the bike as well, these don't come with the bike, but I have two flashing lights. These are really bright. I wouldn't shine them down the lens, but they're very strong. But yeah, I always have two lights, two at the front, two at the rear, just for visibility of others, not for my own visibility. Cycling through central London, there's street lamps everywhere, so you never need a light to see your way, as it were. But it's more for being seen. And I always have two, just in case one goes out halfway on my ride, then I've still got the second one. And these are very good. These are made by a company called Moon, that I was recommended by someone in Evans, but they're rechargeable. So when I get to work, I plug them in, charge them up, and that way I don't have to keep changing batteries. And they only need a charge about once a week. So I'd say they're good for at least 6 or 7 hours a week. And I don't run them out. They've still got life in them when I recharge them. So they've been very useful. And these lights are ideal for being seen by drivers ahead of you who are maybe pulling out of a side road, or pedestrians who are walking out. So this time of year is not too much of a worry, because I tend to be cycling in the daylight, but through the winter months, it's dark when I cycle into work, and then it's dark again by 3, half 3, so cycling home in the dark. So these are very useful. So we'll come on to the drivetrain of the bike. So when I bought the bike, it came with a chainring, which is this one at the front here, had 42 teeth, and the cassette at the back here had 17. I found that was okay, but I found I was topping out. What I mean by that was, it's like if you drive your car in first gear, once you get to a certain speed, the engine's revving really high, and the equivalent is my legs were going around like Fred Flintstone. So I found on the open stretches, probably above sort of 15 mile an hour, it was starting to get that my legs were spinning around a bit too fast for my liking. So I changed the gearing on this. So this is now 50 teeth, and the cassette is now 16. And that's just, so it's a bit harder to get away from traffic lights with a single speed. So it's kind of like pulling away from your car in, say, like third gear. It's a bit slow to get going, but I've got a bit more top end, so I can get up to maybe 20, 25 mile an hour. It's probably the absolute max on this bike before your legs are a bit of a blur. But that seems to work. And it's a single speed bike. And the difference between a single speed and a fixed speed is a fixed speed, you can't freewheel. The bike is locked, so if you move the pedal back, the bike will go backwards. Whereas this is a single speed, so you can freewheel the bike. I think this is much, much safer. It's quite often when you're cycling where you don't want to, you want to be able to stop and coast, say up to traffic lights or something like that. So fixed speed is really for a track bike where they're never going to have to stop. So you do see people using them. I'm sure some people probably argue that they like them. And on a fixed speed, you can brake just by slowing your pedalling, because it slows the tyre down. But for me, I'm quite happy with the disc brakes, and I think this is the best solution for me. And because there are no gears, there's no levers and shifters and cables, it makes the bike a bit simpler, easier to maintain, and you have less problems. So I found with a geared bike, you're constantly changing up and down through the gears as you come up to traffic lights or accelerate away, and the cable that would be basically pulling you know, the gear lever would pull to change the gear down here, would fray through every sort of 6 months or so, and I'd have to get that done. And the annual service was a lot more when you had to replace them, because, as you know, I don't clean my bike religiously. You can see it's a bit dirty now. It's actually cleaner than it normally is because I got it serviced and they cleaned it. But I try and I use and abuse my bike, and I don't really maintain it that well. I just kind of use it and then basically update all of this every year. But when you're changing these once a year, it's a lot cheaper than changing a huge big group set of a 10 or 20 gear bike. So yeah, simpler to maintain, bit cheaper, less to go wrong. So that kind of counters the bad sides are it's difficult to pull away from lights because you're slow and it takes you a little while to get up to speed, but that's the only real downside. And you can't go super fast because you've only got one gear, so you'll top out at the other end. But I'm not racing. This is purely the only cycling I do is to work and back. I don't cycle outside of that. So, and London's very flat. Yeah, the other big downside, if you try and go up a big hill on this, because you've only got one gear, you're gonna struggle. Especially if it's a steep hill, you just won't be able to do it. So you won't be able to turn the pedals. So I guess that's the other downside. But for a London commute, there's a few mild inclines, but there's nothing that I would call a hill. So here on the rear, you can see we've got disc brakes, same as the front, which is good. We've also got another mudguard. The original mudguard that came with this broke actually, so it was connected up here, and then I think basically I hit a pothole and banged, and it broke here, and the plastic basically sheared through. So I've just replaced it with this one, which just clips onto the. It's just got a couple. It's got like a rubber clip here that you put it around, and you put a couple of zip ties around to hold it on. It's very lightweight. It's actually more lightweight than the other one, which had a bit more steel construction, which was bolted through some of these holes. So that's absolutely fine. And again, there's this little rubber flange here at the back, which just helps stop the worst of the spray. And you really want a rear mudguard for two reasons. Number one is that it will all flick off the back of the tyre up to your backside, basically, so you end up with a really wet bottom. And you're surprised, put one of these on, and even in a really heaviest of days, you get to work and your backside's still dry, which is always nice. But the other thing is courtesy to your fellow cyclists. So if you don't have one of these mudguards on, the water from your bike is flicking up into the eyes of the bike behind, which I know only too well. I've been, had water flicked up in my face plenty of times. So it's quite nice for your other cyclists to just have one of these. So you're keeping yourself dry, and you're also not flicking crap into the eyes of the cyclist behind you. So as well as two lights on the front, I also have two lights on the rear. Again, for the same reason, if one went out halfway on my cycle home, I mean, the fronts I might spot, but I definitely wouldn't notice this, but then I've got a backup one. I've also got the reflector that comes with the bike. There's also a reflector on the front, but I think more likely you're going to be illuminated by headlights from the back. One thing I will do in winter, I haven't done it yet, but I've bought myself some reflective tape. I don't know if you can see, but it's the same sort of stuff like workmen wear. I'm actually going to put it all around these rear basically elements of the bike here, so that just helps, if a car's headlights hit you, that will light it up. I think when you're cycling, anything in front of me I feel that I'm in control of because I can see it and I can brake for it. But behind me I'm completely dependent. I don't have any rear view mirrors or anything, so there's not much I can do about traffic behind me. So the most I can do is just make sure I'm nice and visible. So hence these two lights, and these are really, really bright lights. Again, these are made by Moon, and they're rechargeable ones, so I don't have to keep changing the batteries. I just, when I get to work, I just plug them in at my desk once a week, and they charge up in a few hours. I think that's it, really. Just a normal seat that came with the bike, nice and comfortable, too bad. I still wear padded cycle shorts or leggings, just for an extra bit of protection, because I cycle every day. Works out about 90 miles a week I do, so it's good to protect your more sensitive areas with a bit of padding. So that's my bike. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it interesting. I don't compare this to all the other bikes in the market, so I can't advise you on whether this is better than the next bike, but certainly this bike has been working very well for me. I've had it for nearly 2 years now, and although I haven't cycled it for the last month whilst we've been under lockdown, I pretty much cycle every work day, just not the weekend. So it gets a good use, and so far it's been extremely solid and dependable. So if you're looking for a good commuter bike, a single speed, steel frame bike, I would very much recommend that as being a sturdy and reliable way to get to work. Great, well, thank you, and thank you for watching, and safe cycling. Take care. Thank you. Bye.